Tonight's big stories. Cebu Pacific issues quote-unquote refined guidelines for customers beset with flight delays and cancellations. We'll break down who's eligible for food, travel vouchers, and hotel accommodations.
The frantic search for the missing Titanic submersible continues, but the window is closing as the sub's oxygen supply runs out tonight.
And President Bongbong Marcos gets ready to sign the Maharlika bill a month after certifying it as urgent. Question is, what happens now to the conflicting provisions between House and the Senate versions? Welcome to the show. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Regina Lay.
And I'm Sean Yao.
So the top story tonight, Cebu Pacific has issued refined policies to compensate customers in case of flight cancellations and delays. Recall that, of course, over the past several days, we've been talking about the Senate inquiry. Well, first of all,
the Senate inquiry was just yesterday.
Correct.
And so
that
this
was
reaction
brought on because of the numerous complaints online,
right,
of flight cancellations and delays and offboarding and so on and so forth.
So that's pretty quick in terms of a reaction time. The following day, tada, refined policies.
Right, and we don't know. Well, I mean, this isn't just a Cebu Pacific problem, of course. That's the other thing I wanted to point out. Philippine Airlines was also called to the hearing today, and of course, they also had to explain why they had to offboard a lot of passengers and also delay a lot of these scheduled flights. Let's take a look at some of these refined policies. That's their word, not ours. For flight cancellations of 72 hours or more from departure, SEBPAC says it's offering passengers the options to rebook, to convert them to travel funds, or to ask for a refund. The same options are available if your flight is canceled within 72 hours from departure, plus the option to get a travel voucher. Now, if your flight is canceled within a day, Cebu Pacific promises free food and the option to move the flight to other carriers, but subject to availability. They also promise to provide hotel accommodation and transportation allowance if the rebooked flight falls on a different day. But to be clear, you'll only get the hotel provision if your flight was canceled on the day of departure. Now, for delayed flights, Cebu Pacific is also offering the options of free rebooking, conversion to travel fund, and refund. Passengers are also promised to be given free food and the option to move the flight to other carriers, but depending again on availability. If the flight is delayed for 4 hours, passengers will be given a one-way travel voucher. And if the flight's delayed for 6 hours, passengers will be given a round-trip voucher.
Well, girls, one thing's for sure, the provisions are a little bit more clear now as to what passengers deserve, those who have been offloaded or overbooked. But let's compare that to the old policies published on the Cebu Pacific Air's website as of August 2022. For flight cancellation of 24 hours before departure, passengers will be given the following options: rebooking for travel, conversion to travel fund, or refund according to the original form of payment. We always hear that when we interview them. Now, the current policies now provide these options for passengers whose flights have been delayed for 72 hours or more. Cebu Pacific has also provided more compensation for those whose flights have been canceled within the day. Also, under the old policies, those with delayed flights are given the options to rebook for travel, convert flight to travel fund with validity of 6 months, or get a refund. Now, the difference with the refined policies is those whose flights are delayed within 4 to 6 hours will now be given travel vouchers and the option to move their flight to another carrier depending on availability.
So, in short, the new policies are a lot more generous and accommodating to passengers.
There's hotel and an option to move to another airline.
Correct. Hotel if your flight was canceled on the day of departure. Alangan naman you're still at home, di ka pa pumunta sa airport and then na-cancel, you don't get hotel for that.
But also yesterday, I think I sent you an article on that. With the Civil Aeronautics Board saying that nung dati may limit yung overbooking ng 10%. Pero dahil sa Air Passenger Bill of Rights, natanggal na yung limit na yun because they were saying na-offset naman, kumbaga, ng compensation. But yung pala, ang ginagawa daw pala, dun, according to that hearing, is imbis na i-compensate for being offloaded, which provides a more considerable amount of
Yeah.
compensation for the passengers, kinakancel na lang.
Kinakancel na lang,
ahead, way ahead
Because
of time. Kasi it's cheaper.
Cost less.
It's cost less
It's cheaper to
for
cancel
the
na lang.
airline.
Cheaper for the airline
Yeah.
daw to do that.
Kasi kung in-offload ka, di ba, sometimes they offer you, ma'am, willing ba kayo ma-offload? Babayaran namin kayo ng 10,000, 15,000. So kung di ka naman nagmamadali, parang, o sige, or baka pupunta kang family reunion, di mo naman type puntahan, sabi mo, sige, kunin ko na lang yung pera, di ba?
May nagvo-volunteer kasi to be offloaded.
Oo, for the
Correct.
cash, di ba? But yun nga, tama nga si Gretchen, nahuli nila, may modus na gano'n, na parang they
So
just
it's cheaper
cancel
to
it.
cancel the whole flight as opposed to compensating each
Pero meron
passenger.
din dyan na sasabihin nila cancel yung flight, tapos malalaman ng passenger, hindi naman pala canceled yung flights. O eto guys, let's check out some of the complaints from netizens over the inconveniences that they experienced with Cebu Pacific that led to this and a Senate inquiry. Of course, all of us have our own stories, but this one's from Maisie. Be extra cautious when booking with #Cebu Pacific because they can suddenly move your international flights far from the original date while you're already checked in at the airport and waiting for boarding for the local leg of your trip. So Maisie was at the airport eating breakfast in front of the gate. Boarding for the Siargao flight has already started when she received another Viber message that the June 13 Korea flight will be moved instead to June 18. O ito naman, from Carmila. Carmila said that, I booked the promo fare for Manila for my supposed birthday lagaw. Who wouldn't be tempted? 388 pesos base fare only to receive an email that the flight was canceled. And if I opt to refund, only the base fare will be refunded, not the taxes and other surcharges. Oo, yun nga yung mas mahal di ba? Yung base fare yung pinakamaliit. Now, for your important travel, sabi ni Carmila, no, don't book Cebu Pacific, especially the promo fare, as the flight that was canceled in my case is now available to book for a 300% markup. Alright, ito naman yung experience ni Michael. Sabi niya, this is a long story, but I had a scheduled flight at 5J459 from Manila to Iloilo departing at 7 p.m. I arrive early and see that the flight is delayed and will leave at 9:40 p.m. Fast forward to 1 a.m., still no updates. The staff of Cebu PAC started telling people verbally that the flight is canceled and we will have to leave at 3 p.m. the next day. Finally, at around 2 a.m., good news, they would let us fly. 30 minutes later, second announcement, there are thunderstorms, may red alert. Ground staff cannot move, so we cannot take off. And finally, another 30 minutes later, so around maybe 3:30 a.m., flight is canceled, you have to deplane. I was too tired to be angry. Now, on top of all that, Michael said that he never received a voucher and that the meal that was given to him as compensation were crackers and biscuits. Too sad and too hungry to be angry.
Skyflakes
Walang
is what
walang
I am seeing
nag-investigate
online.
There all have also been complaints about the inconsistencies when it comes to the reasons as to why it was delayed or canceled. Parang sino nga ba tumitingin talaga kung ano yung reason
Exactly.
to
Actually,
verify
airlines
what
are
actually happened?
Correct.
Diba?
What the airlines are saying is there's a multitude of reasons. And to be fair to them, diba, we've covered some of them, which is may global shortage ka naman of the engine for some of the Airbus Neo aircraft, right? So around the
yeah.
world, there's
Pero Reg,
100
in fairness to these people
aircraft.
complaining rin, ha, before the pandemic, towards the end of 2019, doon na nag-start yung airline
Right.
parts shortage, which was of course exacerbated nung nag-lockdown lahat, tas wala namang lumilipad, so walang gumagawa ng parts, right? But even before that, ang dami ng stories na ganito coming out of Cebu Pacific. So maybe nag-worsen lang yung problem
And
nila.
AirAsia, I should point out.
Yeah, AirAsia always
the budget
delayed.
carriers, essentially, right?
Right, but even PAL now, right?
Now, with all these complaints, Congressman Rufus Rodriguez wants Cebu Pacific's franchise suspended. In a statement, Rodriguez said a congressional franchise is a privilege that should not be enjoyed at the expense of the public. The Cagayan de Oro lawmaker accused SEBPAC of using maintenance and limited availability of spare parts as a, quote, palusot. Although there really is a global problem with the Airbus engines manufactured by Pratt & Whitney. Some 120 planes around the world are grounded because of this. And so the Senate has begun its inquiry into the barrage of complaints against SEBPAC, which include overbooking, offloading, and various glitches. The airline, which attributed the issues mainly to global supply chain challenges, has since apologized and vowed to improve its services.
Well, it's not just airline passengers that are having bad experiences these days. More and more people are falling victim to abusive online lenders. Dozens of them sought the help of the PNP Anti-Cybercrime Group today, and they're looking to file complaints against some online lending firms for charging excessive interest and resorting to harassment to force them to pay up. Some of them are being shamed, while others receive threatening messages and gestures.
May nag-unang nag-text sa akin na walang nakukulong sa utang pero may namamatay. Sabi nila, 10,000 lang ang ulo ko. May pinadala sila na funeral service sa bahay. Ako yung naka-receive paglabas ko, sabi nila, kukunin namin yung bangkay ni Cherry. Diyan ba si Cherry?
Meron naman akong pamilya dito na dito po yung address ko sa Pinas. Inuna po nila magpadala sa amo ko.
Well, as of now, 6 lending firms and 30 of its officials face criminal raps for abusive collection practice. Well, bawal ito, girls, under RA 11765 or Financial Products and Services Consumer Protection Act. Violators could face up to 5 years in prison, aside from fines of up to 2 million pesos.
Isa pa dyan na itong mga online lending apps. Sorry, nung pandemic, medyo na-bore kami ng mommy ko. So, tinry namin. Kasi ang daming ads pushing these online lending apps. If you read the super fine print, like it's really, really fine. Parang kailangan mo pa i-magnify or i-zoom yung screen mo. Sobrang prohibitive ng rates. As in, it's so crazy.
Yeah, and then
It's insane.
the collection
Practices.
like harassing
Death
your
threats.
relatives,
Your friends on Facebook.
They get your address book and they message everyone you know, telling them about your utang, your debt to them, right? So we know as well that the Bangko Sentral and the SEC have been clamping down on these illegal lenders or these abusive lenders. Pero again, it's like that game whack-a-mole, right?
Yeah.
They sprout up so fast.
So ito na yung tanong ngayon, diba? How is the PNP Anti-Cybercrime Group, kasi doon sila nag-complain, how are they coming along with their investigation on this matter? Brian Castillo joins us for some updates. Go ahead, Brian.
Sean, the PNP Anti-Cybercrime Group admits that it's a challenge for them to pinpoint the people behind these online lending tactics. The group says they've gotten hold of some suspects, but most, if not all, point to a higher up. The PNP says it's possible that the financiers behind these online lending schemes are not really in the Philippines. For now, authorities remind the public not to resort to these online lenders as much as possible, especially those who offer their loan services through message links. Sean?
Thanks for that, Brian.
Now, if it's any consolation, President Marcos says we're on the right track when it comes to addressing these cases of abusive online lenders and scammers. Marcos spoke on the sidelines of the SEC's 85th anniversary. He said the mandatory SIM card registration has been a good step towards preventing online and text scams. However, Marcos also reminded the public to still, of course, practice vigilance and to be cautious when it comes to loan offers and other deals that sound too good to be true.
The SIM card registration, I think, was a big step. And I think we are getting to the point where we have disposed of or taken out of the system many of the SIM cards that have not been registered because they have been used for illegal purposes and for these scams that we have been hearing about.
Some big news regarding the Sovereign Wealth Fund. President Bongbong Marcos said he would sign the proposed law creating the Maharlika Investment Fund as soon as it reaches his office. The president said, though, that he would still need to look into the changes made in the Congress's approved version of the proposed Sovereign Wealth Fund, which he said should be independent from government to become successful. Marcos said the key for sovereign, pension, and hedge funds to succeed rests on those who handle them. He added that it is important that the Maharlika operates as an independent fund, adding that it would not be influenced by political decisions in government.
Yan ang susi dyan. Kung korap ang ilagay mo dyan, korap talaga yan. Mawawala yung pera. Kung mahusay ang nilalagay mo dyan, ay lalaki yan at magagamit natin yung pondong yan.
Well, on Wednesday, Senate President Mig Zubiri signed the final version of the Maharlika bill. Zubiri expressed his confidence in the changes made by the majority bloc of the Senate through their Viber group. The Makabayan bloc, however, questioned how the discussions regarding the bill were limited to that Viber group. They argued that it goes against the Constitution. They claim that this makes a mockery of the constitutional requirement of transparency when the legislature deliberates on and approves laws. The bloc called on Zubiri to immediately retract his approval of this corrected bill and to ensure that proper procedures are followed in the legislative process.
So, what did the senators have to say about the Makabayan bloc's recent pronouncements? Maricel Halili is with us to give us the details. Go ahead, Maricel.
Sean, Senate President Mig Zubiri has yet to provide to the Makabayan bloc's recent remarks, but Senator Lori Legarda believes that they did not violate any policies. She said that they are not only fixing the correction on Viber, they just combined the question section 50 and 51, which contained the different prescriptive periods or the time when someone can be charged for breaking the law. The MIF bill will now be brought to the Congress for Speaker Martin Romualdez's signature before it is sent directly to Malacanang for President Bongbong Marcos to sign and become a full-fledged law. Sean?
Thanks for that, Maricel Halili.
We're going to pause for a quick break, but up next, rescuers are racing against time, searching for the lost submersible that was on its way to the Titanic wreckage site. The sub is estimated to have run out of oxygen an hour ago. More updates when we return.
You are still watching The Big Story here on One News. The frantic international search for the missing tourist submersible entered a more desperate phase as the oxygen supply on the vessel entered its final hours. Titan went missing with 5 people aboard on Sunday after embarking on a trip to the wreck of the Titanic. The search for the sub has been focused on an area where Canadian aircraft detected underwater noises. But even as search intensified with new ships joining the race against time, Coast Guard officials estimated the 5 passengers ran out of air just around 7:10 p.m. The location of the missing vessel and the exact situation on board still remains a mystery.
The discovery of banging noises coming from presumably the lost sub, we don't know that in fact they are coming from that, but let's assume for a moment that they are, then that is a positive sign. But that still is no guarantee. We have fewer than 24 hours. The oxygen is supposed to last until Thursday morning here, United States time. So it's now become a race against the clock more than ever.
Now let's just do a quick rundown of everything that's transpired since the submersible disappeared. The sub lost contact with its carrier Sunday about an hour and 45 minutes into its descent and approximately 900 nautical miles east of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Its oxygen supply, as we just said, is estimated to last up to 96 hours, meaning the vessel was expected to have run out of air 7:10 p.m. our time. That's about an hour ago. The search expanded exponentially on Wednesday as international crews canvassed a surface area twice the size of Connecticut and 2.5 miles deep after hearing underwater noises. A high-tech French robot that can dive to 20,000 feet and has remote-controlled arms has also joined the search. Those on board have been identified as Stockton Rush, the CEO of Ocean Gate Expeditions, the company behind the mission. British billionaire Hamish Harding, the owner of Action Aviation, was also there, as was French dive expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet, and prominent Pakistani businessman Shahzada Dawood and his son Suleiman.
And as the search continues, safety concerns have also been raised about this missing submersible. U.S. court documents show that David Lockridge, the company's director of marine operations, had raised concerns in an inspection report. The report identified numerous issues that posed serious safety concerns, including the way the hull had been tested. The Titan submersible, described as experimental by the company, was built from unusual material for a deep-sea vessel. Its hull, surrounding the hollow part where passengers sit, was made from carbon fiber, with titanium end plates and a small window on one end. Carbon fiber is cheaper than titanium or steel and is extremely strong, but it is largely untested for deep-sea vessels like the Titan. The shape of the Titan is also unusual. The hull of a deep-sea or deep diving sub is usually spherical, which means it receives an equal amount of pressure at every point. But Titan's hull is tube-shaped, so the pressure would not be equally distributed. And while a certification for a submersible is not necessary, the Titan was never certified or classed, as the company wrote a blog post about it in 2019. A CBS reporter who was on the Titan last year quoted a waiver for passengers to sign before boarding as stating that it was a, quote, an experimental submersible vessel that had not been approved or certified by any regulatory body, which could result in physical injury, emotional trauma, or death.
Sabi, kanina inisip namin what could have happened to the submersible. Pag kunwari nawalan siya ng power because it lost communication, right? So it went down. How will you be able to find it? I mean, in the vast depths of the ocean, right? Parang kung ikaw rin yung naghahanap, you have to listen for noises.
That's what the crew said.
Yeah, but also
The
why
search crew.
why could it not be open from the inside? I think that's a question.
They had to
It's
seal
probably
it.
like a
the
pressure
bolted-
issue.
the pressure, diba?
Because
Yeah.
at that depth, I think parang almost 6,000 pounds per square inch of pressure on the, which is the other theory.
Which apparently the sub was not able to handle that amount of pressure.
sa
Pero,
test.
according
pero kasi
to some of
third
the-
time na niya. I mean, it's the third expedition already. Pero my question is, why were they using a game controller for...
Why were there no seats?
And there was a waiver that mentioned death 3 times.
So if you signed it,
So the more interesting question that we were debating before we got to the story was, if somebody paid you or gave you a free seat to go to the Titanic, would you take it?
You know, I
Free,
got
not paying $250,000.
I got goosebumps because I love, going on these adventures, thrill-seeking
you've got women in
adventures.
action.
and your answer
precisely
was
because
you
of that.
probably would have gone.
And usually I would if there was a history of it being successful, I would go without questions asked. But this morning I'm just like, oh my God, I have to check everything that I go on.
Buti na lang di mo binasa yung email nila. Yung email nila sa'yo. Inviting. No, but seriously, there was already a report raised, right, by yung David Lockridge nga. He said na he complained about very specific parts.
Correct.
I think the window,
The security aspects of it. Yeah.
and it was ignored.
the
And
safety pala, the safety
yeah.
aspects of it. Yeah.
Right, so okay, lipat muna tayo sa ibang topic. Iba na pala yung nasa prompter. Eto, sa more bad news, more adjustments for some Meralco customers are in the offing because first off, there is the pending rate increase, and today, Meralco says that it will have additional requirements for Lifeline customers. So Lifeline customers are those whose monthly electric bills do not exceed 100 kilowatt hours and are given discounts from 20% to 100% depending on consumption. But starting this month, for a Lifeline customer to qualify for the subsidy, they would also need to prove that they are part of the Pantawid Pamilya program or 4Ps program of the government. Currently, Meralco has 2.5 million Lifeline customers and they all need to apply for the subsidy program.
Kung ikaw ay nandoon sa mga communities na na-classify na marginalized, yung mga pamilyang na kita na may kahirapan sa buhay, then at beneficiaryo pa ng 4Ps, then you can already apply to be part of this program. Because the spirit of the law here is really to ensure na maibibigay ito doon sa mga deserving.
Well, with this new directive, how can an actual 4P beneficiary continue to receive the subsidy from Meralco? We spoke with Mojo Pamela Vasquez for the details. Pam.
Reg, for Meralco customers who are also a 4Ps member, they would need to submit an application with Meralco along with their 4Ps ID as proof. If the applicant is a member of the marginalized sector, they would need a certification from the DSWD. Just a reminder also, the Meralco bill should be in the name of the 4Ps beneficiary or marginalized applicant. Meralco also said they will continue to weed out subsidy beneficiaries who live in condos and subdivisions who otherwise have the capacity to pay. Reg?
Thanks so much for that update, Pamela Vasquez.
Up next, the battle against HIV may soon become easier in the country as over 370,000 bottles of HIV medication are set to arrive within 2023. More on that when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here in One News. Now, some updates on the health front. A new batch of medicines for HIV will be arriving soon. The health department said this is to augment the current supply of HIV medication, which have been running low. Health Secretary Ted Herbosa earlier said that among his focus was, as DOH chief, is to address the rising cases of tuberculosis and HIV in the country. Some 58,000 bottles of HIV drugs are set to arrive by the end of the month. And this shipment is expected to cover medication needs of the current HIV patients nationwide. More supplies of this medicine are expected to arrive by July and September.
Aside from fans, several well-known brands also showed their support and loyalty to the iconic trio of Tito, Vic, and Joey. Now, one of those brands is Pure Gold, which has been a partner of the trio for several years. In the company's post, they revealed that Tito, Vic, and Joey will continue to be collaborators. They mentioned that they first worked with the trio when they only had 50 branches. Now, after 25 years and nearly 500 stores, they're still looking forward to new milestones together with Tito, Vic, and Joey, who are now part of the Kapatid Network.
404 not found and page unavailable. This is what you'll see if you search the YouTube account of our big picture tonight. Any guesses?
Akala ko talagang, akala ko talaga,
Seryoso,
parang
seryoso.
nagkamali.
Sabi ko, John, why are you reading the error message
It's
on the
usually,
prompter?
it's usually an error, right?
Buffering, guys.
We were scared for you.
I was
Okay,
like,
guys, pasensya na. Buffering pa tong dalawa sa tabi.
what is wrong with you? Why are you reading the error message?
Now, in case you all missed it, self-proclaimed son of God, Pastor Apollo Quiboloy has been cast out of YouTube for violating the site's community guidelines. Quiboloy's YouTube channel had more than 47,000 subscribers before it was removed. His other social media accounts are still up and running, but Quiboloy is in the FBI's most wanted list for sex trafficking charges. A federal warrant for his arrest was issued back in November of 2021.
makakompensate nga naman kapag hindi mo take down, di ba? He's earning money.
He's earning
He says
money.
they said that he's fighting the charges, and no word yet whether he's, how they're doing on that front. But
Parang
yes.
tuloy-tuloy pa rin naman sila, at least here in the Philippines.
Exactly.
I mean, he has
know if
SMNI.
His own
still-
media network, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And his other social media accounts, of course. But that's for another day, and that's the show for tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in, and good night.